You could argue that this last season, Mike Tomlin did his finest job as Steelers head coach. The only teams below Pittsburgh in points per game were the Jets, Giants, Patriots, and Panthers. All of those teams were bad. None of them made the playoffs. Pittsburgh did. And while a trip to the postseason gives the appearance of being close, the reality is a lot of work needs to be done this offseason. Here's Brooke Pryor with the Steelers offseason checklist.
You know, I'm proud of the guys. I'm certainly disappointed. I know that they are.
We've had enough of this. It's time to get some wins. There's some urgency here for sure.
For the third time in 4 seasons, the Pittsburgh Steelers played on Wild Card Weekend. And for the third time in 4 seasons, that's where their season ended. The Steelers and Mike Tomlin enter the 2024 offseason trying to break free of the purgatory they've been stuck in since winning their last playoff game in 2016.
All of us that have been around for a little while, are anxious to take this next step. Getting a little impatient. We need to see the kind of improvement we all want to see. The biggest thing we need is quality play at the quarterback position.
The Steelers had high hopes for 2022 first-round pick Kenny Pickett's second season, but preseason hype never materialized into regular season success. And Pickett's injury-marred sophomore effort ended on the bench, while longtime backup Mason Rudolph quarterbacked the team to a 3-game win streak to reach the playoffs. While Tomlin said Pickett will resume his status as QB1 this offseason, that position is anything but solidified.
Obviously, there will be competition. There is always competition in this thing. We don't anoint anyone.
After the team mutually parted ways with Mitch Trubisky, Pickett's most obvious challenger is Rudolph, who's scheduled to hit free agency. Could Pittsburgh be in the QB market through the draft or free agency? Their own precedent suggests the Steelers aren't likely to chase a blockbuster trade or top-dollar free agent quarterback signing, but GM Omar Khan has been more aggressive than his predecessor in both areas. And with other pressing needs, a top-tier corner to pair with Rookie Defensive Player of the Year finalist Joey Porter Jr., or a more reliable and consistent center, spending the capital of a first-round pick on a quarterback isn't likely. Figuring out that position and the team's offensive identity will be the top priority for newly hired offensive coordinator Arthur Smith.
And the Steelers come up huge. The catch is made. The explosion. Touchdown, Pittsburgh.
With nearly every starter expected to return, including all 11 from a defense of bona fide and emerging stars, the Steelers are a quarterback away from ending the franchise's longest drought of postseason wins in the Super Bowl era. But in a league and a division where elite quarterback play largely dictates success, that's still a long way to go.
All right, Brooke Pryor, thank you. Let's bring in our quarterback, Tim Hasselbeck, to sort out the Steelers' quarterback situation. Tim, potentially a lot of free agent options there. You heard Brooke talk about it. It's Justin Fields, trade, Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins, just to name a few, plus the NFL draft coming up. Give me what you believe is the smartest option for Pittsburgh.
I believe that it's Justin Fields, Matt, based on age, health, what he's shown while he's been in the NFL. And look, I think it's important for people to look at the context of the Steelers. Kenny Pickett was seen as a ready-made prospect because of his age and how much experience he had coming out of high school. He hasn't panned out. There needs to be competition, as Mike Tomlin talked about, and really want to be competition. It would be trade for Justin Fields, have him be your starting quarterback, and Kenny Pickett at that point would be the backup. Fields, I think, physically kind of fits a lot of what would go really well in Pittsburgh, especially with kind of some of the things they have going with their run game with Jaylen Warren. And so I think between that, the leadership in the organization between, ownership and head coach would be a stable thing for Justin Fields and probably something he deserves.
So 2 years in, you're done with Kenny Pickett. That's over.
I think because of the type of prospect that he was, Matt, yes, because he came in with nearly 50 college starts under his belt. He was older than a lot of guys that were drafted in front of him the year before. And so I think because of that, I think you look at that and you say, what's the ceiling? What's the developmental upside of Kenny Pickett? It isn't there in my estimation, and I think that it certainly is with Justin Fields.
Yeah, we'll have to see how they handle that situation here. It's going to be very intriguing with a number of these teams. We mentioned Kirk Cousins due to become a free agent. Give me the ideal team for Cousins.
I think going back to Minnesota, because you have to look at, one, their need. They experienced life without him this past year, and it wasn't that great. Had to make multiple moves because of it. I think also because of his age and coming off of a significant injury, that's important too. We saw this with Jimmy Garoppolo when he was headed to free agency. So much uncertainty about what his injury situation was, the recovery, the timeline. And while that's not impossible to get over, I think just being in Minnesota, them being aware of where he is in his rehab, what type of player and leader he's been for them in the past, I think it just makes the most sense for him to return to Minnesota. They need him, probably the best and easiest landing spot for Kirk, and so it feels like both sides end up winning in that scenario.
And pre-injury, he was playing some of the best football of his career. If he can get back at it, it certainly is a good fit. So much more football to talk. Tim will be let back in the Zoom in just a bit for a playoff team to find a fix next season.
SportsCenter at noon Eastern Time continues its offseason series tomorrow with Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, who have the 10th overall pick in April's NFL Draft. Then we'll pick things back up next week with the Cowboys and Eagles on Monday and Tuesday before we move on to the AFC for the rest of the week.